Canva paid teams of developers millions of dollars to create Canva. I think I can vibe code it in a few minutes for pennies. But Canva is a very complex app. Can I really vibe code the whole thing? This one might turn into a mini-series, so let's dive right in. So the first thing that I want to ask myself when I have an app idea that I want to create, I want to know just how much is possible. I want to know what the AI is capable of. And if there's some step of the process that's going to fail, I want to find it quickly. That's how I like to code. That's what always works for me. So we're going to start out with a little experiment. You see, one of the things that I've noticed in my extensive work with using these AI systems is that they're really good at making one-file demos, especially single-file HTML, CSS, JavaScript files. So when setting out to make a site like Canva, one of the biggest questions on my mind is, can I make the templates without having to hire anybody to make templates? That is, can I have the AI make templates for me, or even custom generate templates on the fly for users? So to find out, I'm going to go to my Fabricator agent. So here I am in my Eidolons interface. These are my built-in agents that come with Eidolons, and I'm going to use Fabricator, which is kind of like the app generator, but a lot simpler. It's just for making single file pages. So I'm going to go into the Fabricator, start a chat, and I'm just going to tell it to create a single file 8.5 by 11 flyer in pure HTML and CSS. Use Google Fonts. For icons, use Lucid via CDN. For images, use Unsplash. Okay, so if you're not a developer, then just for your knowledge, Lucid is a very popular set of icons that a lot of websites use. And they just look really nice. It's good for something to use for flyers. Unsplash, I'm sure you're aware, is basically just free stock photography. And I just realized I was super not specific here, so I'm going to change this. I'm going to terminate this, and I'm going to add the flyer is for a yoga studio. All right, let's see what happens. All right, and here it goes, filling up our code. And let's preview this to see how it looks. And it did a terrible job. So, I mean, it looks like it was going for something here. Let's tell it what it did wrong and see if it can fix it. All right, so in addition to telling it what to do, I'm going to zoom way out so that I can take a picture of this abomination. And copy and paste. And let's see if it can do a better job with this. All right, now this is looking a lot better. And now I can actually see what it was going for. It just had to fix this image link. And now this arrangement actually doesn't look that bad. Let me zoom back in so I can see better. So there are still just a few issues that I wanted to fix, so I'm going to tell it. And let me just take a quick snapshot of this. And by the way, this tool I'm using is TextSmith Capture. It is sadly discontinued. If you know of something better that I should be using, then let me know down in the comments. And I'm going to actually put a little arrow right here to let it know that some of these are cut off. And maybe I'll point to these as well. And we'll copy this, paste it in. And again, I'm just going to tell it. Much better, but there are a few more issues. One, the weekly classes and welcoming community boxes are cut off at the bottom. And two, the email addresses and Instagram username extend past their container. And so close. All right, looks like we're gonna have to go one more round with this guy. And just telling it again, the content now extends down the bottom of the page. So I went back and forth with it a few times, and this is what we ended up with. It's not perfect, there's a few issues, but this is good enough for what we wanna do with it for now. Let me just zoom back in so we can see what we're doing. And now I'm going to grab this code, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to just set it aside for later. Because the next thing we need to do, which is perhaps the next hardest part, is figure out how to actually make the Canva editor. After that, everything should be pretty easy. So I'm going to go back to my agents, and this time I want to talk to the researcher. And I'm going to tell it, I want to create a clone of Canva. I have an HTML template file. What libraries exist that will help me edit the HTML elements on page? Like move them around, resize them, rotate them, and edit their text. Because the thing is, if somebody has already created something that'll do most of the work for me, then I don't need to reinvent the wheel. All right, so it's given me a very thorough answer, and I have gone through myself and looked at a lot of these. And I think what I'm gonna go with first of all is Moveable. This is a pretty cool library. So this gets us a lot of the functionality that we already need, and this is gonna save us a lot of time. All right, cool. So now it's time to hop over to our app builder, and let's create a new app. And what I'll do is I'll just go to my code, and I'm just going to paste in that template that it made me earlier. And then I'm going to tell it, using the code provided as a template, build a Canva-like editor. use Moveable.js from a CDN. All right, and if you're not familiar, a CDN is just a content delivery network, which just means that it's going to grab this from the internet and that we don't have to have any kind of local file. All right, and let's see what it can do with this. You know, GPT-5 just never fails to do way more than I ask or expect. So this is a little bit hard to see, so I'm gonna shrink this down right here. But it just made this whole ass editor. All right, but how good is it? Kind of had this image jump out of its bounds there. Let's see, can I resize? Sorta. Can I rotate? Yeah, so there's definitely a few things to fix. Let's give our agent a list. So first I want to make sure that the selection panel over here can collapse. Next, I want to make it so that the elements don't affect the page flow when moving, rotating, or resizing. And what I mean by the page flow is just referring to the fact that when I change the size of one thing, it moves everything else on the page. And three, I want to make sure that every block, text, icon, header, etc. is selectable. So we'll let it do its magic and see what happens. All right, so I've now gone back and forth with this thing several times, and the result is less than impressive. So when I click on these, they get all distorted, the size changes, and generally it's just not what we're looking for. Clicking here just completely messed up the formatting. I like to keep the fails in the video because I want you guys to see what the actual process is like. And the truth is, it's not always as smooth as some people would have you believe. So let's scratch this whole thing and start over. And what I'll do, I'll create a new app. I'm going to start the same way by pasting in my code, but I'm going to do a couple things different. One, I'm going to change the settings, and I'm going to change the reasoning effort to low. Now you might wonder, why would I set it to low? Isn't that going to make it dumber? And the answer is not necessarily. What it means is that it's going to spend less time just sitting there and thinking about it, which for our purposes might actually be what we want. Because you see, GPT-5 has this tendency to bite off more than it can chew. And yes, it can get some very impressive results at times, but it can also just fall into these rabbit holes where it creates something way more complex than it can manage. And then once it gets there, there's nothing that it can do to escape. So basically what I'm asking it is to do less of the work on its own and actually just follow my instructions. Okay, so now for the instructions, here's what I'm saying. I've provided a template for a yoga studio flyer. Import Moveable.js from a CDN and make it so I can edit and move around all the important elements in the flyer, including headers, paragraphs, images, icons, and blocks that they're in. The elements should be movable such that the flow of the document is unchanged when they move, rotate, and resize. All right, so I've done a couple of things here. First of all, I'm being specific right off the bat about what I want to be able to edit. Second, I'm specifying right away that I want the elements to not mess with the flow of the document. And most important, I'm not saying anything about a Canva-like editor, because before we do anything, I just want to make sure that we can do the basic editing part. So let's send this off. The other nice thing about the low reasoning level is that it is much faster. All right, and it looks like it's finished. Let's see how it did. Let's hide the code. See what happens if I click one. All right, there's my movable selection. Can I move this around? Oh, we got the little guides and everything. It is notably not messing up the page flow. It can rotate, it can resize. Oh, it's a little glitchy. So this is already a lot better than the previous attempt, but we still have a few things to fix. So let's see if I can have it clean it up. All right, so I'm not going to read all these, but I invite you to pause the video if you want to read them. All right, looks like it's done with the changes. Let's see how it looks. Let's resize this. Ah, that looks so much better. Let's rotate here. Yeah, really nice. Can move it around. The layout looks a lot cleaner this time. Looks like I can no longer actually edit the individual elements. So this looks better, but I want to be able to actually edit all of the elements here. So let's give it one more try. All right, here's my prompt. All right, it just made one tool call. Let's see if it fixed it. And no, it did not. Wait, just kidding. Yes, it did. Okay, I see. So not everything is selectable, but a lot of things are. All right, so let's see if it works. Can I move this around? Yes, I can. Interestingly, if I move this too far off to the side, then it goes behind these other elements. When I click this, it jumped in front of this text here. But most of this is working pretty close to how I want it. Okay, it's treating this as an entire element. But what's nice is I can actually modify this text in here. So it actually made everything editable. Let's see if we can clean up these other issues. All right, so I just told it to fix these last few issues here. If you're not familiar with the jargon, the z-index just refers to like how close the element is to you. Just meaning that we don't want the text to go behind other elements. We want it to be on top of everything. I also said leaf nodes, which just means the text, headers, icons, etc. All right, let's see how it did. I'll click the header here and move it around. And nope, it's still behind things. Let's give it one more try. All right, so I just reiterated what the problem is. and just added a little bit more detail. All right, and it's finished. Let's try it again. And we move this and nope, it still goes behind. Okay, but it did finally make this header here selectable. So guys, this is the reality of vibe coding. Sometimes you gotta go back and forth with it. You gotta give it ideas. You gotta work with it. So let's try one more thing. All right, so what I'm telling you here, see in its explanation, it said that it set the Z index 9,999, which is kind of what I told it should do. And then it sets the currently selected element to 10,000. I mean, I didn't tell it exactly to do that, but I did mention the Z index. So there might be something about how the page is technically constructed that it just hasn't really thought about yet. All right, and it actually asked me, it said if any of the elements still go behind others, and tell me which ones. And I mean, basically it's just asking for more information. So that's what I gave it. I said that all of the elements are still doing it and none of them can leave their container. So it's like when I drag this, it won't let me leave this little box right here. All right, so I went back and forth with it just a few more times, and here's where we are. I can now grab these, and the layout's a little bit jumpy still, but I can now move these around, and they don't hide behind the rest of the screen. All right, and let me actually see this full screen. So I'm just going back to my apps page. Click view, and now we can actually see it as a full page. All right, so this right here, this was actually an issue with the original template. It was kind of cut off, but now the text is actually visible. So let's see if we can actually fix it using the tools now. We'll just move this down and then see if we can select this. And okay, it's still a little bit jumpy, but let's see, we can just put that like so. Now we can actually kind of fix the template with the editor itself. And look, it's a little bit cut off there. So let's just make that a little wider. All right, I think this is cut off here. So what if we, oh, and it's gone. Let's see, where did it go? Let's move this. There it is. Okay, so it seems like there's still a little bit of trouble with the layering, but that's fine. We can still clean some of this up. All right, let's see if we can make these a little bit better here. And wow, that's really long. What if we just went like this? And oh no, I lost my phone. Put you back there, link you down. There's our email and our Instagram. All right, and man, this is probably actually a real yoga place. And if it is, then Sunrise Yoga, I apologize that my AI hallucinated your actual yoga studio. But overall, this is a result that still needs a little bit more work. And that's fine because we are not done. This is only step one. This video is going to be a series where I'm going to explain multiple steps in creating a more complex web app. This step was a basic proof of concept, and I think we achieved that pretty well. We proved that this can be done. And by the way, if creating apps is something that you're interested in, Eidolons makes it extremely easy to not only build apps, but actually monetize them. Sell them from your own WordPress site with your own payment processor, with all of the AI models, all of the credits, all of the plumbing, all taken care of for you. So if that's something you're interested in, be sure to check out Aidolons.com. Also, be sure to like and subscribe so that you can see the other parts in this series in which I am going to build an entire Canva clone, vibe coding the entire way. All right, guys, that's it. I will see you next time.